Thank you. My name is Dan Kaplos. I have the privilege of doing a radio show each afternoon from 3 to 6 on an AM station, 630 KHOW, and we get a chance to discuss these issues often these days. In fact, too often. Kind of sad we have to be here. Kind of sad something as vital as religious liberty is under this blatant attack. But we are under attack, and we're not going to sit back and take it. So I appreciate you being here today. I would imagine, from my understanding of history, the crowd today is about the same size as the crowd of the founding fathers and mothers who first gathered to say, wait a second, our rights don't come from that guy with the crown on, they come from God. And these rights are fundamental, and they can't be taken away by anybody other than God, and that cornerstone right is the right to religious liberty. So I appreciate your willingness to come out today and stand up for that, and do more than stand up for it today. Do the other things we're going to talk about. My brief thoughts on that is, obviously, it's historic. Religious liberty is the cornerstone. There's a reason why it's #1 in the Bill of Rights. If you don't have that, the other rights don't make a whole lot of sense. And the key is, and one of the silver linings in this terrible challenge to religious liberty, is it's not a partisan thing. It's not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing, a blue state, red state. It's not a Catholic, a Protestant, a Christian, a Jewish, an atheist issue. It's a constitutional issue. It's a basic human rights issue. So we come together today living up to really the command of our founding fathers, including Thomas Jefferson and John Hancock, who told us we would have to stand up to tyranny. And they defined tyranny as the government trying to take away these fundamental rights, the first among those religious liberties. So thank you for what you're doing. I'd like to turn it over at this point to Father David Nix. And to me, Father Nix represents, no matter what faith, if any, you come from, he represents really the best of us. You know, he's a young person who's decided to forsake all the flashy stuff and the bling and all that, and devote himself to things greater than self. Father Nix is a young priest ordained just a couple of years ago, parochial vicar at St. Anthony Catholic Church in Sterling, Colorado. Love to get his thoughts and the invocation, Father David Nix.
Father, we thank you for calling us as your children to the capital steps of this great city, of this great country. We're first here to praise your majesty, and secondly to thank you for our freedoms, God-given freedoms, not man-given freedoms. Where families of all faiths can still gather on the government steps to cry out with King David, Lord, who is like you, who rescue the weak from the strong, and the poor from the oppressor? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, before whom shall I shrink? It is your face we seek, O Lord, hide not your face. Like Peter and John in Acts of the Apostles, we say to those who misuse their office, we must obey God rather than man. And like Mary in Luke's Gospel, we humbly pray, Lord, help of the servant Israel. Come and remember your promise of mercy, the promise you've made to our fathers, to Abraham and your children forever. Eternal Father, although the culture of life is under attack, we know that the very last enemy, death, has already been defeated by the cross of Jesus Christ, by his resurrection that stands as our victory over death and disease and even fear. We know, Father, that where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. And we ask you, Blessed Trinity, for your courage to stand. We ask you, Blessed Trinity, for your standard and banner to be again over our once great country. For this we know that we must accept your courage, responsibility, and honesty that you wish to pour out on the United States through the many or the few. The foundations, once shaken, may not yet collapse. We pray we be enough people petitioning mercy for our whole country. And we ask that your love, not man's judgment, may be poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. All of this we ask in the sweet and holy name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. You know, a few months ago, I was almost at the point of despair on this whole issue of religious freedom. I was talking to a dear friend in Washington, D.C., heavily involved in everything that we're standing for, but on the East Coast. And on the phone, I said to her regarding all this religious freedom, I said, look, why should we fight for these hospitals that sold out a long time ago on being Catholic? Now we're fighting the HHS mandate, and it's too little, too late. Maybe this is exactly what we need. We get what we deserve for our years of lukewarmness, and now the church gets small and holy. I'm not joining this fight. Luckily for me, she wasn't afraid to correct a priest. She told me about a meeting she had recently in Europe, pro-life Europe, with all the leaders in that movement, standing for the same thing that we do, all in one room. And these men said to her, America is the last bastion. If America falls, who else will fight? She told me how any time in history, when lines across every cultural line were threatened, there was always one country that stood above the rest. She said, all of Europe is looking to us. In all of her pro-life work across Europe, she was moved in her travels by the graves of American soldiers scattering every single country. Although not a country of saints, we came to Europe in the 1940s knowing what was great about America. First, they knew, as the Apostle Paul writes, that it is for freedom that Christ has set you free. These men coming across in the 1940s, though not being saints, they knew that no religious group would be targeted for bullying precisely because so many of our American soldiers had been first-generation immigrants. They remembered why their parents came to the United States. It was for the same reasons people always come to the United States. Ancestors came here because they didn't have religious freedom. And this is why the immigrants still come here today, because they don't have religious freedom. That has always been the story of the huddled masses. Does America still have this religious sense of freedom? I propose we do, and I'd like to share a short story with you. I have a friend who's a Marine in Afghanistan. This past year, after a different Marine base had mishandled the Quran, terror spread through Afghanistan, leading to the death of 4 military personnel. To prevent future errors, all Marines were sent through days of debriefing on a weekend called How to Handle the Quran. But the mantra of this weekend was, we will hold sacred the beliefs held sacred by others. We will hold sacred the beliefs held sacred by others. Obviously in reference to Muslims. I'm going to share a short segment from an email that this Marine sent to his family. It's regarding this issue. He said, I do not know who actually formulated the words, we will hold sacred the beliefs held sacred by others. It was probably some staff secretary that works within the U.S. Forces Afghanistan headquarters. This message needs to make its way back to President Obama, Kathleen Sebelius, and all of Congress. The Quran burning was a tragic incident which has led to even more tragic and avoidable deaths of 4 service members. The Department of Health and Human Services reaffirmation of the rule to force religious organizations to cover preventative services for women is a tragedy that reverses the religious liberties that this great country was built on. A tragedy of this magnitude would lead to thousands more deaths of the most helpless souls in our society, the unborn, and further destroy the sanctity of womanhood. Not bad for a Marine, right? Similarly, Cardinal Dolan points out that the Amish have no health insurance, and yet the government respects this decision. Why then are Catholics targeted for our refusal to fund the insurance that would cover abortions, sterilizations, and contraception. Now granted, our opponents say this is not about religious freedom. Our opponents say that this is primarily about making sure that women have full access to reproductive health care. We Catholics respond in the media with the claim of the conscience clause of the First Amendment, and rightly so. The government should respect this. But today I'd like to give you the reason that we actually claim conscience on this. At least one reason. Why do we claim conscience against funding contraceptive pills as normal insurance? It's because of this. Besides being an abortifacient, the daily pill, the normal run-of-the-mill oral contraceptive, will be admitted to be by any OBGYN in the United States a deadly medicine for women. It's the only medicine on the market that does not treat medicine, but inhibits a normally functioning part of the body. Any knowledgeable physician, when pushed, will hesitantly admit that oral contraceptives directly cause women to have tremendously higher rates of cervical cancer, pulmonary embolisms, and cerebrovascular accidents, also otherwise known as strokes. Deadly medicines have never been part of healthcare, especially when they have nothing to do with birth or control. No, the government will not force our Catholic hand or our medical hand to push these deadly pills on women that take so many of their lives. Before I was a priest, I was a paramedic for the city and county of Denver. Our hospital was just 2 blocks down that way. And in my training at another hospital, just 2 hospitals down, just so you know this isn't Catholic propaganda, they trained us anytime we came across a young female hyperventilating, we had to go through what's called a rule-out pulmonary embolism. That means try to get to the bottom of the fact, is this actually a blood clot in the lungs? The 2 questions we were told to ask at a secular hospital while trying to figure out if this was a blood clot in the lungs was, is she smoking? Is she on the pill? Because of how many strokes this leads to. This is why we're claiming conscience of not giving deadly medicines to women. And even if you're not convinced by the medicine, I'd like to give you one more reason to be courageous to standing up for religious freedom against the HHS mandate, even if you're not Catholic. Charles Cadlick, a non-Catholic, who disagrees with the Church's position on contraception. He writes for Forbes magazine about what will happen if we as the Catholic Church acquiesce to the government's HHS demands. He says that if we Catholics follow the demands of HHS and what President Obama wants to put on us, he says, quote, such a choice would strip the Church of its legitimacy and make it a de facto vassal of the state. Do you see why we're asking people of all faiths and even no faith to stand today? Yes, today the Catholic Church becomes a vassal of the state. Tomorrow, your small Christian community. My friends, my mom's 4 grandparents were from Ireland. And I'm sure some of their forefathers and mothers were martyrs to make sure that their church did not become a vassal of the United Kingdom's idea of church. Today's martyrs may not be blood martyrs, but perhaps something just as difficult, emotional martyrs. You know, anyone can show up to a rally on the steps of the cathedral to stand for this, to stand for religious freedom against the HHS mandate. But what about at work when people have a surly smile on their face when you're talking about religious freedom? What about in line at the supermarket when they think your kids are taking up too much space? What about what you post on Facebook? What about what you hear at family reunions? All much harder, but more glorious than what happens here today. You know, St. Thomas Aquinas, he doesn't define fortitude as we do. We have bumper stickers that say no fear. St. Thomas Aquinas defines fortitude as the instantaneous grace to overcome your fear. You see, the grace comes not before, but when you make that leap. when you make that leap to stand up in a difficult environment, when you decide to speak up, not when you're going to be hacked to death, but maybe just scoffed at, smiled at like you're a child. But see here, all of heaven, all of goodness, all of truth, all of beauty comes to your aid when you speak up alone in the darkness of your workplace or your cyberspace. But we must speak the truth in love and in gentleness. Because more rides on your little voice than you actually might imagine. Friedrich Gustav Niemöller wrote this about 70 years ago. In Germany, they came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Catholic. Then they came for me. And by that time, no one was left to speak up. Today, by the grace of God, we will speak up.
Before I introduce the Chancellor, I just wanted to mention I've had the privilege of working in the media now for about 20 years, you know, including stints with NBC, other local outlets, so I know how the media works. And it's really sad that today we don't see the 4 or 5 TV cameras, the 2 or 3 photographers, you know, from local papers and magazines, because I guarantee you, if this many people were on the steps of the Capitol today protesting in favor of the administration's attempt to force the church to provide birth control, or in favor of gay marriage, in favor of abortion, you would have those cameras. And I'm so sorry they aren't here today, because if they just did a feature on the faces in this crowd, it would say so much to Colorado about the broad support for what has brought you here today. Because just looking out at you, it represents every corner of our society. You know, from the stylish young women over here to, you know, the businessman over here to, you can tell somebody who probably left the farm this morning down in front, drove all the way in here to this rally. No, I wasn't pointing to you, sorry. to the little kids in the crowd. I mean, the administration badly miscalculated. There is broad support across America for religious liberty, and thank you for being here. And it looks to us as if some people are getting pretty warm. Feel free to come back into the shade, okay, on the steps of the Capitol. I feel a little guilty hanging out back there in the shade while people are broiling, so feel free to come up if you get too warm, especially your kids, anybody who may be older. But let me introduce the new Chancellor, okay? Really like J.D. Flynn. He came on our show yesterday, entangled with my co-host on a couple of issues, just did a fantastic job, and very, very glad he is on the job. Let's hear from Chancellor Flynn.
Good afternoon, how you doing? I'm sorry it's such a cold day. This is not what we had planned for.
Thank you.
You know, as Dan said, and I thank you for that introduction, my name is J.D. Flynn. I'm the Chancellor of the Archdiocese of Denver, and I'm here today in that capacity. I represent our new Archbishop, Archbishop Sam Aquila, and Bishop Jim Conley. But I'm also here today as a Coloradan and as an American, because I know that who we are as Coloradans really speaks to who we are as Americans. As Coloradans, we're open, we're tolerant, we're kind, we're interested in the ideas of other people, and that's not what the HHS mandate is about. The HHS mandate is about shoving down the values of a small group down the throats of everyone else in America. And that's just not what we're about as Coloradans, is it? I have been thinking about Dan's question, why isn't the media here in mass, for a while? And I think part of it is that when the media looks, they don't see what we see. When they look at us gathered here, they see a small crowd. They don't see a crowd that's big enough to really make a difference. I don't see a small crowd standing here. As Dan said, I see people from all walks of life, all kinds of Coloradans, families, young people, priests, ministers, an old friend from high school standing here, all kinds of people standing here, and I'm proud of that. But I also see something else. Behind us, I see the founding fathers of our country standing with us. I see George Washington, who said that the religious The role of religion in democracy is essential, that we cannot have a just democratic government without religious people, and that's been forgotten today. I also see standing with us the martyrs of the church who have given their lives for 2,000 years for religious liberty. How many of you have seen the movie For Greater Glory? Right? If you haven't seen it, you're wasting your time seeing other movies. Go see it today. I see the Cristero martyrs who stood to their deaths. Young children, old men, men with families, priests who stood to their deaths standing for religious liberty. I see them standing here with us today. I see men like St. Maximilian Kolbe who gave their lives for religious liberty, for the freedom of others in concentration camps in Europe. I see the men who gave their lives for the liberty of Jews and Catholics and priests and communists and all kinds of people in Nazi Germany, Americans who gave their lives on the battlefields of Europe standing with us today. And finally, I see the Blessed Mother, Mary, our mother, standing with us today, who brought Jesus into the public square without shame. And that is our vocation, that is our call, to bring our religious faith into the public square. Whether you're a Catholic, whether you share the values of the Catholic Church on the issue of contraception or not isn't the issue. The issue is that who we are as religious people is who we are as Americans and is who we are before God. And if our country tells us that we can't stand up as religious people, that to be taken seriously in the political discussion, we have to leave our religion, leave our identity at the door. They're doing us injustice and they're doing American injustice. And we're not going to stand for that, are we? So what do we need to do? First of all, we need to be really, really proud to be religious people. Whether you're religious or not, America is a deeply religious country, and we need to be proud of that identity. That's the thing that sets us apart. The deeply religious identity of the United States is the thing that has made it, for more than 200 years, a shining city on the hill to the rest of the world, espousing values of human dignity and freedom when no one else would. Sending us to places where no one else would speak about the rights of the oppressed. Why do we do that? Because we're a deeply religious people. We know what freedom is and we know what dignity is. And we need to be proud of that history. We also need to be rooted, we need to educate ourselves in the great Western intellectual tradition from which America comes. We need to understand what it means for a Westerner, for an American, for a product of Western civilization to say that I'm free, that I have freedom to choose the good. That law should, in order for law to be good, law should make me good and law should make my community good. We need to know what it means to be united to one another in a democracy for the common good. And if we don't know those things, other people are going to tell us what justice is. And other people are going to tell us what freedom is. And other people are going to tell us what liberty is. And I'm sick and tired of other people telling us what liberty is. Are you with me? Fantastic. So we need to know what the hell we're talking about or else we're wasting our time. Don't tell my boss, the bishop, I said hell again. But the other thing that we do is once we know that, we have to go out and we have to be present and we have to be engaged in the political discussion. If we want to say that religious freedom is an important value in the United States, then we have to be actively religious people in the public square. We have to be willing to vote. We have to be willing to encourage other people to vote. We have to run for things. We have to go to meetings and testify and read the paper and be informed, and too many of us aren't willing to do that because it takes a lot of time and it's not that glamorous. But that's what we need to do if we want to see religious freedom be protected in this country, and if we want our values to be upheld and our voices to be heard. So it's great that we came to this rally, and it's great that the Founding Fathers are behind us, and it's great that the Cristeros are behind us, and it's great that Mary, our mother, is behind us, but we're the ones who have to do the work. And so I ask you today to be with me, to keep standing up for religious freedom, to keep standing up for our basic human rights here in America by getting involved. Thanks so much.